All right, ready to dive in. Today we're taking a close look at the false count,
This 17th century Spanish play.
the one and only. It's a wild ride, that's for sure. Love triangles. You got it. Mistaken identities.
Oh, yeah,
A chimney sweep pretending to be nobility.
it's all there. And more.
Plus, it's a great example of that classic comedic style, the kind of thing they were doing in Italian commedia dell'arte.
Right. And the Spanish Golden Age, too, of course.
Yeah.
We're lucky to have some original pieces to work with here.
Excerpts, yes, straight from the play itself. The prologue and even the character list.
Gives you a real sense of the world they were living in.
Speaking of, the prologue is really something else. Doesn't pull any punches when it comes to the politics of the day.
Oh, yeah, it lays bare all that hypocrisy.
All that social climbing, too. Like the playwright's giving us a little wink, letting us know what's coming.
A taste of the satire, for sure. So the play kicks off with Don Carlos. He's the governor of Cádiz.
Important guy.
Totally smitten with Julia. Problem is, Julia's already married.
Ah, the classic love triangle. To Francisco, no less. A much older, but very wealthy man.
A recipe for disaster, or at least a good story.
Well, Don Carlos isn't one to give up easily. He's got a plan.
Let me guess. Elopement.
Bolder than that. He fakes a Turkish abduction.
Wait, what? How do you even...
He's got a captured galley, dresses it up to look like a pirate ship. The whole 9 yards.
Wow. Bold move, especially back then.
Oh, definitely. 17th century Spain. Everyone was on edge about pirates.
And the Ottoman Empire, of course. Constant threat.
Exactly. So the play taps into those real fears, ramps up the drama.
And then uses it all for laughs.
Brilliant. Right. And then we've got Guillaume, our chimney sweep.
Humble beginnings.
Gets roped into Don Carlos's scheme.
Sounds messy.
Oh, it is. Don Carlos transforms him, dresses him up like a nobleman.
Why on earth would he?
To woo Francisco's daughter, Isabella. She's all about status, obsessed with it.
So they're using Gilliam as a pawn.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Poor guy. But it gives us a chance to think about social mobility, what those class distinctions really mean.
The chimney sweep turned elite. There's a whole story there on its own.
Imagine the scenes. Gilliam, in his fancy clothes, trying to act the part.
Demanding a 5-star breakfast, probably. Using words he doesn't even understand.
I can picture it now. Makes you wonder, right? How much of who we are comes from outside? The clothes we wear, the way people see us?
It's all a performance, maybe.
Maybe it is. One scene I'm really looking forward to is when Don Carlos tries to visit Julia at her house.
Uh-oh. Husband's home.
You know it. Francisco's lurking around, suspicious as ever.
Talk about tension.
The audience knows what Don Carlos is up to, but the characters are clueless. It's like a train wreck about to happen.
Can't look away. Then there's the scene on the ship during the fake attack.
Total mayhem. Swords clashing, people yelling, Francisco freaking out.
Poor guy.
The audience must have been in stitches.
I like that they used a ship. Feels isolated, right? Like a little world all its own.
Yeah, like a pressure cooker. All these characters, their secrets, their quirks, it's all going to come out.
Can't hide on a ship. The relationships are interesting, too. Julia and Francisco, for example. Their marriage is clearly falling apart.
He's so jealous, so controlling.
Is he a villain, though? Or just a product of his time? A man trying to hold on to what he thinks is his?
Good question. Then you got Isabella and Clara. Such different women.
Isabella's all about appearances, right? Clara seems more genuine, down to earth.
Shows the different pressures on women back then, what was expected of them.
And Don Carlos, the mastermind behind this whole scheme. He wants Julia, sure.
But he's willing to lie and manipulate to get her.
Love can make people do crazy things. But does the end justify the means?
That's what the play makes you think about. And don't forget, it's not just about the plot. The satire is sharp, really digs into social norms.
The language they use. It's almost over the top.
Like they're poking fun at how seriously people take themselves.
I can't wait to see what they do with Guillaume, trying to woo Isabella with his newfound sophistication.
There's this scene where he tries to impress her with poetry. Awful poetry.
Cringeworthy, I bet.
The kind that would make Shakespeare spin in his grave.
Yeah.
But it's all part of the act.
It's showing us how fake all that courtly stuff can be. Words to hide behind.
The play is like holding up a mirror to society, stripping away the titles and the performances.
We're all just human underneath.
With all our flaws and desires. And don't forget the physical comedy. It's a farce, after all.
Lots of pratfalls, I imagine. People hiding, getting caught.
The scene where Gilliam demands this over-the-top breakfast, it's hilarious.
A guy who used to clean chimneys, now he's living like a king.
And the irony is, he didn't even want it. It's a brilliant satire of wealth and excess, like how quickly we can adapt to luxury.
Even if it's all a lie. Makes you think about identity, too. Who are we, really, when everything's stripped away?
It's like a 17th century Prince and the Pauper, these characters from different worlds.
Collide in a big, messy explosion.
And it all comes back to character, doesn't it?
Not the title or the clothes, but who you really are. Your honesty, your kindness.
But honesty's in short supply here. Remember Francisco? He's dead set against his daughter marrying Antonio.
Why's that?
Sees him as beneath her, socially, financially. It's all about class.
Rigid society back then. Not much room for change.
Well, Antonio's not going to take that lying down. He wants revenge on Isabella for all the scorn and insults.
And how does he plan to do that?
He's going to use Gilliam.
The false count.
Encourages him to woo Isabella, knowing she'll fall for the fake title, the fancy lifestyle.
Talk about playing with fire.
Oh, it's going to be good. It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck. You know it's going to end badly, but you can't help but watch.
Isabella's so focused on marrying up that she's completely blind.
And it's all going to blow up in her face, spectacularly.
The play's really good at showing how superficiality can backfire.
Sometimes the people who seem the most confident,
They're the ones who need validation the most.
and the audience knows the truth about Gilliam. But Isabella doesn't.
That dramatic irony is just delicious. Makes it even funnier.
It all comes to a head when Gilliam drops the act.
The mask comes off.
Back to his chimney sweep self, demanding his noble bride.
Isabella must be mortified.
Utterly. Her dreams of grandeur, gone. Reality hits hard. It's what she deserves, though, for all that pride and arrogance.
And the others. Do they get off easy?
Not exactly. Francisco, with all his controlling behavior, he gets his too.
How so?
He gets captured by the Turks. Remember, during that staged attack?
Oh,
He's
yeah.
terrified, worried about being ransomed. It's actually kind of sad.
Almost. But maybe he needed that shakeup to see himself from the outside.
And Don Carlos. He gets Julie in the end.
Happy ending.
But the play makes you wonder, will it last? After all the lies and deception,
Love can be tricky. It can be real, but still mixed up with all sorts of things.
power, control.
And that's what makes The False Count so much more than a funny story.
It uses humor to expose these deep truths about society, about ourselves.
It asks us to think about identity, about ambition, about the things we really value.
And it does it all while making us laugh.
Which is a pretty amazing feat. It really makes you think, all those layers beneath a pretty straightforward story.
It's like, were those 17th century audiences laughing along or...
Or seeing themselves up there.
Exactly. Did they get the jokes or feel a little bit called out?
I'm sure they were laughing. But good comedy, it always has that bite to it, right?
A little bit of truth that stings. This play, it's full of surprises, too. You think you know where it's going, and then...
Curveball?
Totally. Like with Gilliam. Chimney sweep turned nobleman. You'd think he'd use that to his advantage.
Climb the ladder, maybe win over Clara?
Right, but no. Instead, he's kind of helpless.
A pawn in everyone else's game.
Don Carlos using him. Antonio using him.
Yeah.
And poor Isabella.
He's the source of her downfall.
Sometimes the fool is the one who teaches us the most. Makes you wonder what the playwright was saying about love itself.
We've got the love triangle, sure. Don Carlos, Julia, Francisco. But it's not all hearts and flowers.
No, it's messy. Julie and Francisco, their marriage.
More about what society expects than what they actually feel.
She's young. He's older, richer, and...
Possessive?
Totally. Francisco's a jealous husband through and through. But there's something kind of sad about him, too, don't you think?
Insecure, maybe? Afraid of losing what he's got.
And then Don Carlos. He's supposed to be the hero, but...
His methods are questionable.
to say the least. Lies and deception.
Oh,
Even with Julia.
love and manipulation. Do they really go together? Can a relationship survive that?
Big questions. The play shows us that even love can have a dark side.
Especially when you add in all that social pressure, the obsession with appearances.
It's like they can't see what's real anymore. Like that scene with Gilliam and the breakfast.
Yeah.
Pure satire.
The one where he demands a feast?
A former chimney sweep living it up like
Yeah.
royalty.
It's hilarious and so pointed.
The playwright's laughing at them.
Right.
At all these rich folks who've lost touch with, I don't know, with reality.
They want to be seen a certain way, but they've forgotten what truly matters.
And then there's the social climbers. The ones who are so desperate to fit in. Isabella, I'm looking at you.
Blinded by the glitter.
She falls for the title, the poetry, the whole charade.
It's almost sad, isn't it? Her downfall.
It is. But also, she kind of had it coming. All that vanity, all that focus on appearances.
A lesson for all of us, maybe. Don't get too caught up in the surface.
Exactly. True happiness, it's got to come from something deeper.
From being yourself, finding the people who get you, who appreciate you for who you are.
You know, it's amazing how a play written centuries ago,
Can still feel so relevant.
we're still obsessed with status, still falling for fake personas, still trying to figure out what it all means.
Human nature, I guess. Doesn't change that much.
So what about the ending? Does everyone get what they deserve?
It's complicated. There's resolution, sure. Don Carlos gets Julia. Isabella learns a hard lesson. Francisco, well,
He gets a taste of his own medicine, maybe.
you could say that, but
Yeah.
it's not all wrapped up in a neat little bow.
Right, it leaves you wondering, have they really changed? Or will they just go back to their old ways?
The playwright doesn't give us all the answers. Leaves us with that uncertainty.
Like real life, I guess. Nothing's ever black and white.
It keeps the conversation going, makes you think about your own life, your own choices.
Deep stuff for a comedy.
That's what makes it so good. It's funny, but it also makes you think. Makes you question things.
Makes you look a little closer at yourself and the world around you.
In a world that can feel pretty shallow sometimes, that's a pretty powerful thing. And it does all that while keeping us entertained. You know what's fascinating? The sheer range of techniques the playwright used to create this comedic masterpiece.
Oh yeah, he pulls out all the stops. Mistaken identities, slapstick, witty banter, dramatic irony. You name it.
A real masterclass in comedic storytelling, all those elements woven together seamlessly.
You can tell he knew exactly what he was doing. Building tension, delivering a punchline. It's all there.
And the language, it's so over the top. The characters with their grand pronouncements.
Then it all falls apart and it's just hilarious.
Highlighting the absurdity of it all, right?
Right.
By taking it to the extreme.
And the physical comedy. Don't forget that. I bet those original productions were wild.
People dashing about, hiding, getting caught in their own webs.
The audience must have been in stitches. But it's not all fun and games. The play has its darker moments too.
Oh yeah, the consequences, the jealousy, the lies, they all come with a price.
It's a comedy, sure, but it doesn't shy away from the pain these characters cause each other.
It's real. And it's what makes the play so powerful. It's funny, but it also makes you think.
About the choices we make, the things we prioritize.
And in the end, I think that's what makes The False Count such a lasting work of art. It's funny, it's insightful.
And it leaves you with a lot to chew on.
Exactly. A deeper understanding of ourselves, of the world around us. A little bit of laughter, a little bit of reflection.
And maybe even a glimmer of hope. It reminds us that even when things are messy and absurd, well, we're all just human, trying our best.
And sometimes our best is pretty ridiculous.
But hey, at least it makes for a good story. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into The False Count.
A real treat to explore this one.
It's a play that's full of surprises.
And timeless insights.
So next time you find yourself putting on a mask or chasing after something that glitters,
Remember, Gilliam, our chimney sweep turned false count?
remember Isabella, blinded by her own ambition.
And ask yourself, what truly matters? What kind of story do you want to tell?
Until next time.